Chapter 6 of Principles of Economics, Book 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Icy Jumbo. Principles of Economics, Book 4 by Alfred Marshall. Chapter 6, Industrial Training. Section 1. Having discussed the causes which govern the growth of a numerous and vigorous population, we have next to consider the training that is required to develop its industrial efficiency. The natural vigour that enables a man to attain great success in any one pursuit would generally have served him in good stead in almost any other. But there are exceptions. Some people, for instance, seem to be fitted from birth for an artistic career and for no other, and occasionally a man of great practical genius is found to be almost devoid of artistic sensibility. But a race that has great nervous strength seems generally able, under favourable conditions, to develop in the course of a few generations ability of almost any kind that it holds in specially high esteem. A race that has acquired vigour in war or in the ruder forms of industry sometimes gains intellectual and artistic power of a high order very quickly, and nearly every literary and artistic epoch of classical and medieval times has been due to a people of great nervous strength, who have been brought into contact with noble thoughts before they have acquired much taste for artificial comforts and luxuries. The growth of this taste in our own age has prevented us from taking full advantage of the opportunities our largely increased resources give us of consecrating the greater part of the highest abilities of the race to the highest aims. But perhaps the intellectual vigour of the age appears less than it really is, in consequence of the growth of scientific pursuits. For in art and literature success is often achieved while genius still wears the fascinating aspect of youth. But in modern science so much knowledge is required for originality that before a student can make his mark in the world, his mind has often lost the first bloom of its freshness, and further, the real value of his work is not often patent to the multitude as that of a picture or poem generally is. Footnote. In this connection, it is worthwhile to notice that the full importance of an epoch-making idea is often not perceived in the generation in which it is made. It starts the thoughts of the world on a new track, but the change of direction is not obvious until the turning point has been left some way behind. In the same way, the mechanical inventions of every age are apt to be underrated relatively to those of earlier times. For a new discovery is seldom fully effective for practical purposes till many minor improvements and subsidiary discoveries have gathered themselves around it. An invention that makes an epoch is very often a generation older than the epoch which it makes. Thus it is that each generation seems to be chiefly occupied in working out the thoughts of the preceding one, while the full importance of its own thoughts is as yet not clearly seen. End of footnote. In the same way, the solid qualities of the modern machine-tending artisan are rated more cheaply than the lighter virtues of the medieval handicraftsman. This is partly because we are apt to regard as commonplace those excellencies which are common in our own time, and to overlook the fact that the term unskilled labourer is constantly changing its meaning. Section 2. Very backward races are unable to keep on at any kind of work for a long time, and even the simplest form of what we would regard as unskilled work is skilled work relatively to them. For they have not the requisite assiduity, and they can acquire it only by a long course of training. But where education is universal, an occupation may fairly be classed as unskilled, though it requires a knowledge of reading and writing. Again, in districts in which manufactures have long been domiciled, a habit of responsibility, of carefulness and promptitude in handling expensive machinery and materials becomes the common property of all, and then much of the work of tending machinery is said to be entirely mechanical and unskilled, and to call forth no human faculty that is worthy of esteem. But in fact it is probable that not 1/10 of the present populations of the world have the mental and moral faculties, the intelligence, and the self-control that are required for it. Perhaps not 1/2 could be made to do the work well by steady training for 2 generations. Even of a manufacturing population, only a small part are capable of doing many of the tasks that appear at first sight to be entirely monotonous. Machine weaving, for instance, simple as it seems, is divided into higher and lower grades, and most of those who work in the lower grades have not the stuff in them that is required for weaving with several colours, and the differences are even great in industries that deal with hard materials, wood, metals, or ceramics. Some kinds of manual work require long continued practice in one set of operations, but these cases are not very common, and they are becoming rarer, for machinery is constantly taking over work that requires manual skill of this kind. It is indeed true that a general command over the use of one's fingers is a very important element of industrial efficiency, but this is the result chiefly of nervous strength and self-mastery. It is of course developed by training, but the greater part of this may be of a general character, and not special to the particular occupation. Just as a good cricketer soon learns to play tennis well, so a skilled artisan can often move into other trades without any great and lasting loss of efficiency. Manual skill that is so specialized that it is quite incapable of being transferred from one occupation to another is becoming steadily a less and less important factor in production. Putting aside for the present the faculties of artistic perception and artistic creation, we may say that what makes one occupation higher than another, what makes the workers of one town or country more efficient than those of another, is chiefly a superiority in general sagacity and energy, which are not specialized to any one occupation. To be able to bear in mind many things at a time, to have everything ready when wanted, to act promptly, and show resource when anything goes wrong, to accommodate oneself quickly to changes in detail of the work done, to be steady and trustworthy, to have always a reserve of force which will come out in emergency. These are the qualities which make a great industrial people. They are not peculiar to any occupation, but are wanted in all, and if they cannot always be easily transferred from one trade to other kindred trades, the chief reason is that they require to be supplemented by some knowledge of materials and familiarity with special processes. We may then use the term general ability to denote those faculties and that general knowledge and intelligence which are in varying degrees the common property of all the higher grades of industry, while that manual dexterity and that acquaintance with particular materials and processes which are required for the special purposes of individual trades may be classed as specialized ability. Section 3. General ability depends largely on the surroundings of childhood and youth. In this, the first and far the most powerful influence is that of the mother. Next comes the influence of the father, of other children, and in some cases of servants. Footnotes. For the influence of the mother. According to Galton, the statement that all great men have had great mothers goes too far, but that shows only that the mother's influence does not outweigh all others, not that it is not greater than any one of them. He says that the mother's influence is most easily traceable among theologians and men of science, because an earnest mother leads her child to feel deeply about great things, and a thoughtful mother does not repress, but encourages that childish curiosity which is the raw material of scientific habits of thought. For the other influences, there are many fine natures among domestic servants, but those who live in very rich houses are apt to get self-indulgent habits, to overestimate the importance of wealth, and generally to put the lower aims of life above the higher, in a way that is not common with independent working people. The company in which the children of some of our best houses spend much of their time is less ennobling than that of the average cottage. Yet in these very houses no servant who is not specially qualified is allowed to take charge